Nerves are selfish because that means you're too worried about what people think of you. And Bryan Cranston is saying, you are there to give something, to do something. That's your job. It's not about the outcome. So for me, that's such a wonderful way to help people as they walk into a new, particularly people who get uncomfortable or newer to the situation. Always easy? No. But like anything, it's a discipline. It takes those baby steps and recognizing that learning a new skill, public speaking, for example.
Welcome to the UpliftHER Leadership Series, a segment on the Self-Care Goddess podcast, a special space where holistic self-care meets high performance and the feminine leads with grace, power, and purpose. This podcast is your pause in a productivity-driven world, a space to reset, regulate, and reconnect with feminine wisdom and visionary leadership. I'm your host, Rita Savoya, holistic nutritionist, trauma-informed breathwork coach, and founder of Breathwork Barista. Each week, you'll hear soul-expanding stories and thought-provoking conversations with women leaders, founders, and changemakers who are redefining success and what it means to lead with heart. These are the conversations we need to create the future we desire, rooted in self-care, integrity, and soul-aligned leadership. Breathe in your power. Breathe out the overwhelm. And let's begin. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Self-Care Goddess podcast with the special series, Uplift Her. This is a special leadership segment of the Self-Care Goddess podcast where high-performing women share their wisdom, lessons, and stories to inspire the next generation of leaders. So before I welcome our guest, I would like us to invite us to get into coherence with our heart, our mind, and our body, and just tune in to what is going on internally for just a few moments here. If you feel called and comfortable closing your eyes, I invite you to close your eyes to really shut out what's going on around you, what you'll be doing next, what you've done before jumping on this podcast, and just really tune in with your body. So allowing the breaths flow in through the nose, expanding the belly area as we breathe in, the rib cage, and then the chest on the inhales. And then the exhales, just letting it go. Letting it go through the mouth with a sigh. Just using those inhales to release. Let go of any tension, any stress in your body. Using those exhales to help you soften and relax for just a couple of moments here. Gifting yourself this time for you. Now I invite you to follow the breaths into the area of the heart. So allow the inhales and exhales to flow in and out of your heart area. Where attention goes, energy flows. So let's energize this beautiful organ that's keeping you alive. Now I invite you to visualize someone that you're grateful for today. Visualize this person as if they were right here in front of you. And I invite you to send them all the love, the gratitude, and the appreciation for being in your life. And now send this love, gratitude, and appreciation to yourself for being here, taking some time out to reset and pause. On your next inhale, slowly flutter your eyes open and come back to us. Thank you for participating in the Heart Math Institute Quick Coherence Technique. Today we have Jenny Riddle. Today's guest knows that powerful communication isn't just about what you say, it's how you make people feel. Meet Jenny Riddle, keynote speaker, professional storyteller, and communication coach who helps leaders show up, speak up, and lead with courage. For over 20 years, Jenny has helped executives, teams, and change makers turn good ideas into unforgettable messages. Her superpower, blending stage presence with leadership savvy. She's performed one-woman shows as real-life icons, and now she helps professionals find their story, their voice, and the confidence to share it. Jenny's love of stories started around her family's kitchen table, where lively conversations was encouraged, opinions were welcome, and storytelling was the heartbeat of connection. These days, she's still surrounded by family in her multi-generational home. Yes, there is an elevator too, where she lives with her husband, sister, and 87-year-old mom, Maggie. Her guilty pleasure, a daily Reese's peanut butter cup, just one, the original kind, with perfect balance. And her theme song, Lion Tamer by Stephen Schwartz, because when it comes to helping people face their fears and take the stage in life or leadership, Jenny's got it down to an art. Let's welcome the brilliant and bold Jenny Riddle. How are you today?
Good. Thank you, Rita. It was fun to hear that introduction.
Yes, I love it. I love it. And it's interesting. I can definitely relate and to the family sort of shenanigans and theatrical, let's say, dinners. I've actually experienced very similar things, and that's why I actually did a little bit of community acting, community services acting. Yes, it was super fun, and I still probably one day get back into that.
Great.
So tell us a little bit more about your personal journey and what's influenced this beautiful, beautiful mission that you're on today.
Thank you for inviting me to be here. And I think really my journey did begin around our kitchen table growing up. And I was really lucky to have a father who was a wonderful mentor for me and a wonderful mother. And my mom, Madge, we call her magical because that's the kind of personality she has. And both my parents were high school English teachers. And my dad, he would make a classroom of our kitchen table. He would have us, spell the 500 most commonly misspelled words, or he would teach us poetry by saying, "Repeat after me. Margaret, are you grieving over Golden Grove unleaving?" And he was also one to give a lot of advice. And so, as wonderful as my dad was, he was also very hard. So there was that piece of it too. But the best piece of advice he ever gave me, whether I was giving a speech or writing a paper, was start with a story. And so in some ways, the work that I do now, I was already being trained around our table with my dad and my mom. My mom and dad, equally brilliant, just have different personalities, but I feel very lucky and blessed that I had that kind of foundation to then build upon ultimately my journey, which was creating something for myself based upon my skills and talents. And again, there's a bit of privilege with that, right? I got to go to college and I had these opportunities, but after teaching for a brief stint out of graduate school, once we had my husband and I were married and we had children, then I decided that I wanted to be home and work part-time. And so I created my own business. So that's how I ended up where I am today. I've just been building upon that ever since. And I guess I'm still gathered with my family around the kitchen table. Now my dad is gone, but we still have my mom. And so it's, I guess everything's kind of come full circle.
Yes, it always does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. Very inspirational. So tell us a little bit more about maybe a pivotal moment in your career when you faced a major challenge and How did you overcome it?
Well, I suppose there's always multiple challenges, in our lives. And I think one for me would be trying to balance family and wanting a career.
Yes.
And I literally was sort of on the cusp, I would say, as a mom, about the time when there was still kind of this push to stay home with your kids. But then also it was the time of Sheryl Sandberg and Lean In. And her book was sort of pivotal because what she said was, hey, you can hire people to take care of your children and you don't have to feel like a guilty mom. And I think so I was right on that line between, people who stayed home and then people who went back to work. So I think for me, it was always trying to balance, oh, I don't, I want to be there for my kids, but honestly, I got kind of bored too, right? So I wanted I wanted to have something. So I would say that challenge has always kind of been there. I think as a mom and a working person, somebody who had aspirations of my own. And so the way I navigated that was, well, to take a little bit of the Sheryl Sandberg's advice to lean in and to trust that, my kids were going to be okay. We had laid the foundation and we had lots of good help, and that I was also setting an example. I know that sounds kind of cliche, but you do want your kids to see that, hey, I'm capable, I can do things. And I would say that's sort of that was when my kids were growing up. I would say that was a more ongoing challenge. And there were times when I did choose being a mom over maybe pushing myself more to work in a, say, 9 to 5 job in a corporate position. But I think that I'm happy with the choice. I'm happy with the choices that I made. It doesn't mean that everything's perfect. But now I also feel like I can still become and do whatever I want to do.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. And yes, another follow-up question I usually ask on this podcast is, do you believe that there is such thing as work-life balance, or is it more work-life harmony or work-life integration, or how do we do this? How do we do this? And yes, you had the luxury, as you mentioned, to take some time off and start your own business, but not everyone can do that. Some have to work 9 to 5 or choose to work the 9 to 5. So what was your secret? How did you balance sort of once you started working a little bit more because the kids were older? How did you balance it or integrate it or prioritize, whatever it is?
Yeah, I'm sure, Rita, you've been asked the same question, and that I think all women are. And I don't know that there is. I think everybody has to kind of figure it out on their own.
Yeah.
And even to some extent, I wonder if it's also a male female problem, right? We tend to ask it of women more, I think, than we do of men. And so I think that also speaks to this idea of, how do we define being a woman and being a man? People have to figure it out on their own. I don't think there's a recipe for work-life balance. The good thing, I think, sometimes is that we have a lot of different outlets and educational opportunities and books to read that can help us deal with maybe things that we might be struggling with or feeling. And I think it's going to ebb and flow. There's not a magic answer. And I do think it got easier for me when I didn't have to worry about my kids so much. Although honestly, my husband and I still laugh. We're always worrying about our kids, right? And even though that they're all in their, 20s, and our oldest is 31, you're really never done being a parent. But I think the daily ins and outs of the challenges of that get easier the older one gets. So I'm really enjoying this part of my life. And so if you could go back and advise your younger self, it would be, hey, try to enjoy that, really be in the moment. Don't always be worrying about the future. But that is the age-old challenge that everybody worries. But it does get easier the older you get. And there's something very empowering about being in your 80s and what have you, because you bring with it a knowledge and a wealth and a breadth of experience that I think allow you to navigate that earlier. So I think your question, is, for me, it is, I think everybody they have to struggle, but on their own, depending on what their circumstances are. And also, I'll just add one more thing. So there's this wonderful new novel out by Nathan Hill called Wellness. And it's sort of a play on that idea. And Rita, based upon what you're doing, is that there's such an emphasis today on creating this sort of holistic, healthy person, this glow inside and out. And I think those things are really valuable. But at the same time, I think there's also a benefit to recognizing that sometimes life is hard and that's okay. And I might feel like crying today and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't come in a pretty package. And just because you pay $1,000 for a spa, it doesn't mean that, that your life is going to be better. You have to fight for what you want. And that comes with a willingness to, as my dad said, never be afraid to put your hands in shit. And it was just sort of like this, both literal and metaphorical, this idea that life is messy.
Yeah.
That's okay. And I really want my daughters to know that, because
Mm-hmm.
I think they grew up in a generation, and I would be interested what you think about this. You're younger than I am. My girls grew up in a generation where in their 20s, as they struggled with anxiety or social media, there was this idea that they wanted a label. What's wrong with me? Or why, how can I fix myself? Now I'm this, now I'm that. And I grew up in a generation where it was like, that's called life, that there aren't any easy fixes. Medication isn't necessary. I believe in, for people who need medication, absolutely. But life it's tough. But it's also beautiful. And I think accepting that paradox, that's such an important piece that I think, particularly for my girls, I would like them to know. And it's not that I'm discounting that if they feel unhappy, if they feel stressed, if they feel anxious, but they are seeking a label, and that label that they call an ailment or whatever, oh, that's what's wrong with me. I say, no, we all feel anxious sometimes. We all feel.
Yeah. Yes, Jenny, I love this because so many things to unpack what you just said in terms of, just going back to your earlier comment, when people ask, would you go back to your 20-year-old self? I'm like, hell no. I love the woman that I've become because of what I experienced in my 20s. And I think going back is just too stressful. So, just going back to your comment, as I age as well, I'm just like, there's just so much knowledge and wisdom and from the experiences that I've had that's why I wouldn't go back to my 20s. I'm like, no, I think I'm good here. Maybe my body, because sometimes I wake up feeling a little achy and I'm like, oh, I never really felt that little pain before. But going to your most recent comment, I completely agree. It's almost as if the labeling makes it okay, which is, I think that's why, it's psychologists use this type of, or psychiatrists use this type of philosophy, but I also find that you attach yourself to it. And going back to your point, it's a lot more transient than we think, right? Because this is life. Life is going to have its beautiful moments. And then that's part of life, is to have the darkness with the light, right? And so I feel that if you attach yourself to that label, then it's kind of hard to get out of it and you're kind of stuck. So I'm more on what you've experienced in terms of your generation. And sometimes it's a little harsh because I remember my parents saying, suck it up, like when we were playing sports, we didn't have, what is that? Like everyone gets a medal or something. No, like you came in third place, second or first. That's it. Nobody and everybody else didn't qualify. So that's the kind of school of thought that I think is healthy, because that's what happens in life. So we want to set these children up for reality, not for something that, no, we don't always win in life. There are those moments where they're going to suck and you just have to suck it up. And I know that sounds harsh for some, but I feel like that's more reflection of reality. So I agree with you. And I'm more from that school of thought for sure.
Yeah. Well, and it made me think of too, because of course, because I have children, and I will add to that, because it's funny hearing you talk about that. I remember last summer, our daughter had been off. She graduated from college and she went off to California and, kind of made it there for a while, but wasn't quite sure what she wanted to do with her life. Anyway, she came home last summer and I kind of think, and my husband a little bit too, that we wanted to give her advice, okay, well, now you're at this point and this is maybe what you should do next. And we maybe wanted to direct her and advise her. And Julia wanted us to see her just as she was in that moment. And I'm not going to lie, we had some knockdown, drag out, some crying and foot stamping and conversations just dissolving into nothingness. And it just made me think about that conversation that we were having, and that it's also easy, I think, as individuals to take our own experiences and our own frame through which we see the world, and we want other people to adopt that. And I think that's particularly true as parents, right? We want to share this wisdom with our children. But one of the lessons that I learned last summer with my daughter, and it wasn't until I teach communication, right? So in some ways, I help people navigate challenging conversations. And yet, boy, this was raw. It was right in my face. It was like, I had to relearn again. And I happened to read this really powerful book called More Time to Think. And the author describes that the most powerful piece of a conversation is attention, like ATTENTI, like giving your attention to that person and respecting them as an equal human being. And one of the best pieces of advice that helped me navigate with my daughter, and then as they're talking in your head, instead of waiting and raising your hand to speak and then advising, be curious about what they're going to say next. And that was really a powerful switch for me, because it gave me that ability to try to be present for her. And you do that in your work, Rita, right? Through the breath work. It's not only being present in our own bodies, but trying to almost project and convey that same presence to the person that we're having a conversation with. And the only reason I bring that up was that as we were talking, it did make me think about how, yes, the beauty of experience is that every day you're adding kind of new tools to your ability to navigate the world and try to be a better person and to be a better mom or to have a better conversation. And so on the one hand, I have to remind myself, my girls are not me. Right. And if they need that label, then I have to be, that's okay. I wonder what you're going to say next, and trust that they can on their own figure out, that they can find their own things. And they do. And they are seekers. They just aren't doing it the way I would do it.
Yeah. That's so true.
I think that's a good leadership lesson too, right? That we often encounter people in our work lives.
Exactly.
Leaders do, right? They want you to do it a certain way. And I think it comes back to that very basic thing of giving your attention to the person, right? And to honor them as a person of equal, their ability to think and
yes,
process things and work through things on their own without feeling like, oh, I'm going to judge you. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to tell you what to do. So
much to unpack, Jenny. Thank you so much. You're absolutely right, because that creates psychological safety. And whether we know it or not, our bodies are picking up energy, right? They're picking up that vibration. And so if you're listening attentively with attention and genuinely being curious and not jumping into like, okay, here's what I would do, or this has happened to me. And it's a skill. You're right. It's a skill that you can definitely develop. Most of us suck at it for sure. But it's that energy is picked up by the person that's speaking. And then they're going to tell you even more things because they're going to feel safe. They're going to read the body language. They're going to pick up on that energy. So right. I completely agree with you.
Yeah. And even because certainly, I love that practice that you do at the top of your episode, here, right? Because the minute we begin to connect to our body and breathe, we are able to be more aware and calm. And as somebody who I teach a public speaking class, and I was talking about that yesterday, how before you go into the room, like everything's learnable. And the breath is one of the best ways to calm yourself and to be able to really be aware of the other person. So when somebody's talking, you're actually breathing, deep breathing, and that allows you to even be a better listener and to be more responsive. So the breath is just such an important and foundational piece of what your work and then of my work, which is how do we use the cliche, how do you find your voice? But literally, how do you find your voice? This instrument, the larynx and the diaphragm, it's through the breath because we speak on the breath. So there's great power in that.
I love it. Yes, the breath is such an anchor to the present moment. It can change your state in seconds. And yes, I have this actual technique. Well, through my public speaking, because I used to be in human resources consulting and leadership development consulting, and then I switched to the holistic world. And through all of that training, everyone would always tell me, make sure you get to the event early before your public speaking and talk to the attendees and just get to know them. So that when you're up on stage, it's going to feel like, it's sort of you've warmed up to them and they warmed up to you. And then doing more functional breathing training, what I found was I want to conserve my energy, right? I don't want to be talking to anybody before that because you are expelling a lot of energy and you're not going to have that same amount when you're up on stage. So I actually now when I have a talk, I hide in the washroom or I'm not talking to too many people because I want to really conserve the energy. So I'm curious about, is there sort of a pre-talk ritual that you do and that is your favorite?
Yes. I think it's a personal thing, but I think having a ritual is important, particularly if nerves are a big part of it. I think the more I do a lot of performing and speaking. So the advantage to that is that there's a higher comfort level, so I don't feel it. But there'll be certain audiences or certain events that I will get a little bit more nervous for. And so I often do the power pose, and that's more of just a calming technique and breathing. And I think another thing that goes along with that, now it's funny, Rita, because I sort of like, it depends on the event, but oftentimes there is a connectivity that happens when you talk to the audience a little bit.
For the event, right? Before the stage, yeah.
Sometimes depending on what it is, I want to make my entrance, right? I don't want to break that sort of, this idea of, oh, here she is. But other times, and that's the beauty of it too, is paying attention to, oh, what does this situation call for? And in this instance, because sometimes when you chat with people, there's an immediate rapport that transfers onto the stage as well, which is kind of cool. So I think that for me, it just depends on what the event is and experience. I certainly have a list of things that I help people who struggle with it more, which is, I call it box breathing, the breathe in on 4, hold it, and, that kind of thing. And just some people also that idea of getting really clear on your strengths and reminding yourself, I think for people who struggle with, feeling like maybe they're not, how am I going to come off, or the lack of confidence is that. Okay, but here's one of my favorite things, which is this idea of it's less about you, right?
Yeah.
And it's more about your audience. And it's such a cool way to think of it, because once you realize, okay, so can I just share this other little?
Yes, please do. Yes.
So when my son, he's a tennis pro, and when he was first got hired at this new position at this country club, it really made him nervous. And we were laughing because he was feeling so like, oh, I hope I do the right thing, that even like feeding the balls would just even feel nerve-wracking to him. And I said, Alex, we have this favorite show that we all watched called Breaking Bad, starring Bryan Cranston, right? It's just
so good.
Right. That was like the first show that my husband and I, like, we just binged the heck out of that show. I loved it. And it's funny because like my best friend, she couldn't stand it. So it just, isn't it funny how shows are like that?
Right.
In
Yeah.
that opening, I mean, there's that opening episode, Bryan Cranston, I mean, he's out there in his underwear in the desert. And he's
Yeah.
hilarious. So he describes, so he, obviously became very successful. Wasn't always that way. He did a lot of little shows, Malcolm in the Middle and other things. And I would say by most people's version, he was successful, but by his own version, he really struggled. And so he would go to these auditions and he wouldn't get it. And he was really frustrated. Finally, his wife, for his birthday, gave him a life coach, like, go see a life coach. And the long and the short of it is that the life coach said, you are not there when you go on audition. You are not there to get a job. You're there to do a job. And your job is to prepare the hell out of it, do the best thing you can any way you want to do it, but don't attach anything to an outcome. You are there to just do the audition 1,000% and then let the outcome go. And Bryan said, so what he would start doing is he would prepare, and he found himself, even in the audition, feeling freer because he wasn't attaching an outcome to it. So if he felt like saying, hey, producer sitting behind the table, stand up for me, I'm going to use you in this scene or whatever, he would do that. And then he would take the script, he would toss it in the garbage can, and he would leave. And it's this great way of reframing how we handle nerves, how we handle putting too much emphasis on what people think of me. And instead, it's like, no. Simon Sinek puts it this way: nerves are selfish because that means you're too worried about what people think of you. And Bryan Cranston is saying, you are there to give something, to do something. That's your job. It's not about the outcome. So for me, that's such a wonderful way to help people as they walk into a new, particularly people who get uncomfortable or newer to the situation. Always easy? No. Like anything, it's a discipline. It takes those baby steps and recognizing that learning a new skill, public speaking, for example, is like learning a sport, right? It's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to have growing pains. It can be learned, and it's not magical.
Right. Right. I love that. So that's very similar to, I'm a yogi as well. And we studied yoga philosophy and during my teacher training, and the concept of non-attachment and not attaching yourself, even in terms of staying positive. This whole, like, now there's this toxic positive psychology sort of movement as well. And I struggled with that because I was like, I always want to be happy. I always want to be positive. And so the way they explained it was, well, if you look at it from a spectrum, and if you're always positive, you're on one side of that spectrum. Life's going to get hard, exactly what we've been talking about before. So you're going to come to the other side of that spectrum. How much harder is it to go from this to this versus being right in the middle? And this is where that's that non-attachment. Don't attach yourself to outcomes. Don't attach yourself to that, always being happy, positive, all of that stuff. And yeah, I'm still kind of struggling because how can we not attach ourselves to outcomes? Like I'm all about that. Like, it's achieving goals and setting metrics, and it's all like, okay, quarterly, what's happening, and monthly and yearly, all of that stuff. So how do we do it? I know it works, but how do we not attach ourselves to an outcome? What are some of your thoughts on this?
Well, I think that it's a brain trick, right? We all, you do want the part. I mean, that's why you're doing it, or you wouldn't audition.
Exactly.
You do, want to make the sale. Otherwise, you wouldn't be given the talk. But I think they are ways of making those moments more authentic, right? We talk about authenticity all the time. And really, I think being authentic it's kind of being the best version of yourself, right? It's trusting that, yeah, my quirks and my weirdness, I'm going to let those out. But also, when I'm most comfortable, it's because I'm prepared and I've worked very hard at sort of strengthening the things that need to be strengthened that then allow me to relax into the moment. So that, so that you can truly be and respond in a way that is authentic, like, oh, Yeah, I did, where your brain isn't just ticking a million miles an hour. Okay, but you said something interesting about you're a yogi. So is that pretty similar to the Buddhist philosophy?
Yes, yes.
So I love Pema Chodron. I think that's how you say her name. And her books were just, oh my gosh. So, and when you read the Buddhist philosophy, you're like, I want to do that. But exactly what you're talking about, right? Because they're living in that middle, they're living in the now.
Yeah.
You used it as sort of, you try to be in the middle, not on either end, because you're sort of not attaching an outcome to it. And you're not worrying about what came before or what came after. And the way that Buddhists write about it, oh my gosh, it's so moving. It's so profound.
So beautiful.
And we know when we're reading that kind of stuff, we go, yes, this is what I want to do. This is so exciting. And then, life happens and you're like, what was I supposed to do? And
Right.
like, shit, that happened. I'm sorry. So, it's like, yeah. And then reality comes in, but hopefully we plant those seeds that allow us to, I think a big part of my journey and what I try to share with other people is I just think it's really exciting when you discover a new tool that you can use. And we just, as human beings, right? We get what we can out of it. We adopt the best we can. And then, we recognize that, okay, maybe that's not working. We revisit it or not. And for me, the things that I love to do is, right, I love to explore new ideas but putting them into reality, putting them into action is it's not always easy, but then that's kind of fun too.
Yeah. And that's part of life as well. I wish staying fit was staying on the couch and eating potato chips and binge watching Netflix series, right? But no, that needs work. Anything in life really worth, even relationships, right? That it needs work. It needs to put in that time and effort so that you can reap the benefits, right? In terms of that. So tell us a little bit more about burnout. We talk a lot about on this series about burnout because we're high achievers, and maybe it comes with the territory. I'm not sure, but it is definitely something that's growing. And maybe I'm curious to hear from you. Did our parents experience burnout and we're just, again, sort of labeling it now and it was always around? Or is it really more? Is it actually, are we suffering from it more? I'd be curious to know, to answer that. But also, like, from your own personal experience, have you experienced burnout?
Yes, I think I have. I would also add that I'm lucky because I do have a job that I love. And
makes a difference.
And I think that I also have, my husband and I have been married for 35 years. So there's a real sense of security there. But I would say what I've experienced, would say within the last 5 years is because my career is both, I'm a dramatic book reviewer, a professional storyteller, right? So I've loved for 20 years, I bring best-selling books to life in character. I write the scripts, I write them with my mom, and we have so much fun doing that, and I perform them, and it's been just this wonderful outlet, a lot of flexibility in it. But then within the last 10 years, I began to pivot more into taking storytelling and showing people in business how to use storytelling strategically. And then adding to that the communication piece of just public speaking, coaching, and leadership training to be better communicators. And I say all that because all of a sudden then I didn't just have this lane that I was in, this sort of established lane where people hired me, just referral after referral after referral. And suddenly I was having to go after stuff more intentionally on my own, right? Through marketing and reaching out and all that kind of stuff. And that's stressful when you have your own business because, like you said, we also think about our own success. Sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. Oh, what does success mean? And, we're always aspiring to the next level. So maybe we can't even enjoy sometimes what we have. So, and coupled with that, you have now, and it's true, this never ending opportunity to work. And I would say the difference between our parents' generation, both my parents were teachers, they had a set schedule. And they didn't mean they didn't bring stuff home, right? Because you had to grade papers and stuff like that, but it was still different. You weren't on your computer. You weren't texting all the time. So I think the way that technology has augmented work to this level of you could almost never be off. And it can become
Mm-hmm.
addictive. Like I always feel like I like
Yeah.
to be busy. I like to work. So then it's very easy to never turn off.
Mm-hmm.
So specifically to your question, about 6 weeks ago, I was just working nonstop, trying to not only doing my performances and doing trainings, but also trying to get the next gig, sending out this, talking, and I was just feeling sucked. I just felt bad. I wasn't enjoying anything. And we went out with friends one night to a jazz club. And I'm sitting there and I was like, I could hardly keep my eyes open. And I thought, this is not me. This isn't fun. And I didn't enjoy the people I was with. And the next day I said to my husband, Bill, I, 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 I don't know what's going on with me. And he's such a great man. And he said, you know what? A, number one, you got to take a lot more pride in what you've accomplished and what you do. And he said, B, you've got to really learn to enjoy it. And if you don't enjoy it, then change, stop doing it then. I mean, it was just sort of like, yeah, that was a little bit of a mini wake up call for me recently. And I switched it from then because I was really feeling burned out. And I
Right.
think burnout is this never ending quest to never even enjoy the moment, never even enjoy your successes because you're always like, well, okay, I got that training or I got that gig, but now I've got to work on the next one. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's exhausting and mentally, and then it impacts the rest of your life. So I have to say now, things can change, but the last 6 weeks, I have been so intentional about I'm going to enjoy this. And I'm going to enjoy if I have a few hours to work out or play tennis or whatever it is, I'm going to enjoy
Mm-hmm.
that. And I'm
Yeah.
going to choose to be with people and enjoy that. And I can just even feel myself as I come back to that. I'm like, yes, that feels good. And it doesn't mean that I'm not ambitious, that I still don't want to have more successes in my life.
Mm.
But so,
I love that.
and I think our own parents burned out in their own ways, right? That my mom at 55, she retired. She never looked back. She was a fantastic teacher. I loved her. She was so ready to have time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then my dad, he was like, oh, well, if Madge is going to stay home, that looks pretty good. So then he retired not too long after that, much to her dismay, because she was really enjoying it.
She was loving the alone time. So yeah, super, super powerful what you're saying. I do agree with so much of that. And that's why that taking that time out and that pause, resetting is so critical. But tell us, what are some ways that you do it? What are your top sort of 3 self-care habits that help you to energize or reset or even just a simple pause?
2 years ago, I went back to running. I'd run off and on throughout my life. I've always been a power walker. I've always been a tennis player.
Hmm.
And so 2 years ago, what was it? I ran into somebody at a outdoor party, and he just was mentioning he's a very, very fine a violist, I believe. And he was telling me about this trainer that he worked with, and he's like, "Oh yeah." And I go, whenever I lift weights, I seem to always hurt myself. He goes, "You should go see Josh." Well, it's the best thing I did. I went and met Josh, and I started this training program with him. And I said, oftentimes I pull my back out when I do weights, and so I just began this program with him, and so it started me on a health kick, and so I started running, and this is the way I did it this time. Have you ever run? Did you ever do that, Rita?
Just in school, like for like meets and stuff, but I don't enjoy it, Jenny. I really
Yeah.
don't. I mean, it's a beautiful runner's high at the end, but I'm just like, I'd rather I like cycling. So I do the RPM classes. That's what
Yeah.
I like. Yeah.
And I think that's exactly running sucks sometimes very hard. And it like never gets easier. I mean, it kind of does, but it doesn't. So I gave myself a rule this time. I said, and I'd read it somewhere that you can 15 seconds at a time, just run for 15 seconds, then stop. But I can do that. And that's what I did. And so I said, I'm not going to put pressure on myself because in the old days, I'd be like, oh, I've got to go run. Oh, I didn't run, the guilt,
Mhm.
blah, blah, blah. And I said, if I ever want to stop, whatever, well, I just began to string those 15 seconds together. And so I wasn't even trying to keep track. It's because I just wanted to enjoy it. So this is myself, right? I just wanted to enjoy this exercise. And then one day Josh said, do you think you could run a mile? well, I do like a challenge. So I was like, oh, okay. So I set the thing. Yeah, I could run a mile. Do you think you could run 2 miles? I think I could. But so I was up to 3 miles. I still run. I love it. But I always give myself permission to stop. And if I miss a day, no problem. Miss a week, no problem. And it's just been, so that has been so wonderful for me, my approach to it. So it starts 15 seconds at a time, and I give myself permission. Nowadays they love the word grace. You give yourself grace if you fall off the wagon or whatever it is. So that's one way. I love to read. I'm a huge reader. It's a part of my career. And my mom, Madge, who is brilliant and such a down-to-earth person, and she still reads. Oh gosh, she could read a book a day. She's amazing. So imagine getting to live with a person, and my sister too, where, I'll be reading a book and I can stop. And sometimes my mom and I are having coffee in the morning, and I can talk about the book, or we'll read a book together. And it's just, gosh, I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how fun that is to still have these conversations with my mother. And we did one, I got to try to take after you. We did one little video cast called Imagine Me, of talking, it was fun. So that's the second thing, is reading. And the third thing I am not a person who denies myself things, but then I always have to balance it out, right? So like if I go ahead and eat,
Reese's peanut butter.
Reese's, I give myself a Reese's every day. But for me, it's always a balancing act. And that's the only, way I can do it. So I would say, I don't worry if I go to a party and eat too much, then I just try to cut back the next day. And I've been like that most of my life. And so I don't know, in your esteem, Rita, since you work with people, does that seem like a healthy thing?
So there are healthier versions of peanut. I'll give you a recipe of Reese's peanut butter cups, unless they change now. Maybe with the new administration, they will change some of those ingredients that they put in there, because I am a nutritionist as well. So I have to put that out there. Right. But I love what you're doing, because I talk about the 80-20 rule. So it's not what you do that 20% of the time where you said you might be eating too much, maybe you're drinking, or maybe you're having too many sweets. It's what you do consistently that 80% of the time. So I'm with you. Unless there's a condition or an illness or a goal that you want to get to. For example, if there is some weight loss goal that you want to get to, or there's a certain condition that you want to address, then yeah, that 80-20 rule, that doesn't work, right? Because we actually have a specific goal. So then we would do something like a healing protocol for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whatever it is. And then you go back once you are in the maintenance phase, where you're happy with your weight, you're happy with your energy levels, you're happy, you're sleeping well, your hormones are balanced, all of that is happening. Then the maintenance can definitely be 80-20. I agree. I'm with you on that. So yeah.
Yeah. I think I like your approach. And I think it's something that for the most part, am able to do. And it doesn't mean I don't have I do love my wine. I love my wine at night, and I know that it's not as good for me. So I do battle that, just try to, keep it at a very, healthy thing, but I don't love succeed in that. And no, I should say the other thing I love to do is walk. I've always been a walker. I either walk or run every day.
In nature? Where are you walking?
So I love it. I walk right out my door, and we have this beautiful prairie path in Elmhurst that I love to walk on. Then we have this other kind of, and it's just very neighborhoody too, right? So I walk the neighborhoods. I just love to walk. And so what I try to do is, like, if I'm meeting a friend for a glass of wine, I try to walk there, and I can. So walking for me, and that's when my brain works so well. I don't always listen to stuff. I do sometimes. I love the daily podcast from New York Times. I love my upbeat music for running, but I also love silence.
Yeah.
And I realize sometimes, and you've probably experienced that too, it's like your brain is tick, 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 and then you go for a walk, and it's as if everything begins to come together in some way that makes sense to you.
So true.
Right? It's such a cool thing. Like, and so I love the sounds of the birds, and
that's actually
leaf blowers. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so the walking and without the any sort of stimulation from headphones or anything or music or anything like that, you're actually practicing being in the moment. You're actually practicing focusing, which everything else around us is we're reinforcing that distraction.
Mhm.
So in order, going back to Buddhist principles and concentration and focus, more like sort of focus, the best way to do it is just to kind of be outside and listen to all of those, be stimulated by all those different sounds, because then you're having to focus on that as opposed to getting distracted by the podcast or by the music, right? So it is a really, really nice way. It's a walking meditation, basically, what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's so right. I love, right. That's a cool idea, right? That is that kind of listening that you're doing outside, and you don't have to
Hmm.
think about it,
Yes. And that's why
right?
you get those aha moments,
It's
because your
so
brain is
cool.
like not doing anything. I get those in the shower too. It's
Mhm.
crazy because we're just doing mundane stuff in the shower. I love so I often recommend this to clients is ask the question to your problem or to the issue or whatever clarity it is that you're wanting. Ask that before you go to bed. So
Mhm.
then allow your subconscious mind to figure it out, because Jenny, we always have all the answers. They're always within us. It's just we need to reconnect with that innate wisdom, whether it's through the body or through the breath or wherever it is, but we always know, or the heart. Oftentimes we make more decisions. There are more signals going from the heart to the brain than vice versa. So here we are thinking we're making a rational, logical decision. I've thought about all of the what ifs. Meanwhile, it's the heart that makes that decision. And then we sort of
Mhm.
rationalize it through our mind. But I love asking the question or whatever it is, the problem at night, and then go for a walk in the morning, and you'll get
Mhm.
that clarity. You'll get those answers, or in the shower, usually, or
Yeah,
your drive to work or something like that. Very powerful.
I totally believe that. And for me, it's like, how even when you were in college and you're studying, when you sleep
Mm.
on something, that's when the information comes
Yes.
together. I use it for because I have to memorize a lot of lines for my one
Mhm.
show. I find repetition, repetition, repetition. And, but then, that I've learned really with memorization, it takes a period of time, but it's the times of quiet, of sleep after putting in the work that
Yeah.
then all of a sudden it's such a cool thing when you're like, okay, I know those, they come to you. It's the same, what you're talking about, in the same way that when we,
Hmm.
you know, however we process problems, that's
Yes.
always such a vital piece of finding the answer. Things seem so much clearer in the morning.
Yes, that's so true. Do you do anything for memorization or for memory to improve your memory? Do you take any supplements or do you have any tricks? No,
I
amazing.
mean, I have lots of techniques that I use, and that I use, I would say two key ones are repetition, like instead of just like literally exposure, right? Just reading something over and over and over again before you try to commit it to memory. And then I use a lot of mnemonic devices. Like sometimes there'll be certain lines that are just tricky, and I'll say, oh, that sentence ended in an S and the next one starts in a T. And so, it's like the alphabet. So I have tons of little things like that I've developed
Mm.
over the years. But people will often say to me, how do you memorize all that stuff? I'm like, yeah, it's painful
Work.
and it's laborious and it's boring as heck, but I have gotten better at it over the years. But there is no, and everybody can memorize, but it's very long process. It
Mm.
just is hard. But you can make it easier by, again, you say, if that's by starting ahead of time, and then it's a lot more fun to read something. And then when you begin to over and over again, and then when you begin to chunk it and commit it to memory, chunk by chunk, easier.
That's another technique as well, the chunking. Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I use lion's mane. It's supposed to be a really good supplement for memory. Lion's mane.
Okay.
It's a medicinal mushroom, and it was helping me through school as well, because there was so much memorization that I needed to do. I love my cue cards.
Yeah.
So I write on those and they're just sort of floating everywhere. And I love recording my voice and then listening to it at night before I go to bed. So before a presentation or anything like that, that's kind of what I do and it works for me. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's part of it, is figuring out what works,
Yes.
your trial and error. And
Yes. I
yeah.
love that. It's so true. So we do have, so as I was having these pre-session talks with amazing women like yourself, sort of this theme emerged. And I'm just curious if you experience this in your life or career. And it's about this masculine and feminine energy. We sort of touched upon that in the beginning, but do you find that, being a high performer, having these, having a successful career and life, do you find that you had to maybe more so earlier or maybe now adopt more of sort of a masculine energy to get things done and to be taken seriously? And I'm speaking this from my own experience when I had a consultancy in Dubai and I was servicing Middle East. I just felt like I needed to embody more of the masculine to be taken serious and to win the contracts basically. And sort of I put my feminine energy on the back burner. But then when I returned back to Canada to help my mom and with her health concerns and my health issues as well, I started nurturing more my feminine side. And it felt amazing because I felt like I was at home more so than embodying that. And again, going back to sort of that balance, it is about being able to embody both. And we need both. We need to nurture, but we also need to get things done and implement more. But I found that now here where I am today, I'm more able to balance both and sort of tap into both. But it was a sort of an eye opening. So just curious if that happened to you in your life and in the industry that you're in. Tell us if that's something that resonates with you.
Well, it's such an important topic. And I think depending on our industry, as you say, it's different. I didn't experience misogyny per se and being shut down or excluded or talked over. And I think part of it was because my first job, I taught college English and speech. And then I taught that I was a teacher in a high school for a while. And so then when I developed my own career, I was my own person, right? I was the performer. And so there was a little bit of a also that's a kind of a cool position to be in because the speakers here, the performers here, you get treated with a lot of respect and blah, blah, blah. But what I did find for personally was what I had to struggle, I think, with my generation was I think I was trying sometimes to fit an ideal female look and mold. And so I would say for me, it was more it was less about toxic behavior of men towards me, in terms of maybe belittling me or how many people, or if you're the only woman in the, sitting around the board table or what have you. I think it was stuff that from culturally that I had foisted on myself, that I had to look a certain way. And I also know that I think I subscribed a little bit to what is it? Yeah, of worrying too much about how I looked. And, so there's that piece of it. But what I had, I think the part that I keep using the word lucky, but I was a lucky person in some ways. So my dad and mom really instilled in me a tremendous sense of self-worth. And it wasn't that they just gave it to me. They gave me lots of opportunities to develop my confidence by having me do all kinds of activities and exposing me to different things and challenging conversations around the table. We talked about a lot of things. I learned to use my voice. I mean that literally and figuratively from a very young age. And I also learned to speak up on behalf of other people and myself very early on. And that was a gift that my parents really gave me. And so that helped me navigate. I was never afraid to speak up in a class, in a meeting. It didn't matter what the situation. I was never afraid to speak up. And it doesn't mean sometimes that I didn't worry about what I said or maybe thought I said the wrong thing. But that was a real something that I had. So I was never afraid of men or of being talked over. I could talk over them. But a lot of people are not so lucky. And you mentioned your own experiences with that. And one of the things I've loved doing is helping women understand the cost of silence. And sometimes it's very difficult. And I would never presume that I could tell somebody else, what they should or shouldn't do in certain volatile situations. But I do know that speaking up can really make not only your immediate situation better, but can make for a better world. Because I want to live in a world, in a work world, women and where men are very respectful of women, and where women say, hey, we don't say that here. And other men say, hey, we don't say that here. And there's a woman I work with who I coach. She's about to retire, very successful person. And I asked her, as we were talking about using her voice, is there anything that, you wish you had done differently? And she said, yes. When all of that bro talk was going on, all of the times that I would say an idea and somebody else would steal it, that I didn't say anything. And she said, if I want to do anything in retirement, I want to go back and help the younger people in our firm, the younger women, learn to speak up. And so it's definitely still an issue, but at the same time, wow, what a powerful thing. And of course, speaking up, there's cost to that too. So you have to weigh. Again, everybody has to weigh. But more often than not, there are so many ways to jump into the conversation instead of leaning back, right? And for me, the cost of silence, of not speaking up in our world today, and we want to create environments is huge. So that's a big one. That's a big part of my mission, is to give, in particular, women the tools and to encourage them to do that. So again, it's like anything. You'll get better at it and you'll get more comfortable with it. But I think we need that.
I love that. I was going to ask that question as well. Like, what is your legacy for in the next generation of women leaders? Can you just answer that? So lovely. I love it. And it's so true. Do you find that I don't know, I have nieces, 22, 21 and 20. And I feel, especially the 21-year-old, I feel she's definitely speaking up a lot more than I did at her age. And I'm just like, yes, you go, girl, especially even with, boyfriends and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I would have never done that. I would have I don't know what I would have done if that was me. But do you find it's a little easier for this generation, you would think? Let's say the women like your daughter's age?
Oh, it's funny because we were just with lunch, our youngest, Julia, who's 26, and she's been dating this guy. And the other day she said, I just talked to him about, well, where do you think our relationship is going? And then she even said, I hope you don't mind me talking about this, but are you open to, what are you looking for? And so they had this really great conversation about it. And so I think there is a comfort level. It's more encouraged maybe, and maybe in their own even to do that. And also, I know I would have to say my older daughter, I think she's pretty good at talking one-on-one, but in terms of that. So maybe it is
a little bit more, yeah. Encouraged, as you mentioned. How about the sort of the beauty part, the aesthetic, especially now with social media? That's another reason why I would not want to go back to my 20s with all these filters. And yeah, I don't envy them at all. Do you find that got easier for people accepting their bodies and the way they look? Even just obviously the big brands like Dove is jumping on this body image. There's a lot of information on body shaming and all of this really important stuff that is talked about now. But do you find it's easier, or is it more difficult to accept your body and the way you look now than when you were growing up?
Well, that is the $1 million question.
What do you think? No right or wrong answer here.
No, I think it's still pretty hard. And as I shared with you, I still remember I played Sandy in Grease when I was in high school.
I love that.
It's so funny, there's that big transformative scene at the end, a la Olivia Newton-John in the movie. You put on these tight pants and the tube top and the red lipstick, and I go out there and the funny thing was, back then you still had to develop your pictures. And after the play had ended, we went to a summer home with some friends and people who had been in the cast and whatever were passing around the pictures, and the guy whose house it was, his older brother was there with some friends, and they were looking at the pictures, and one of them was me in that final scene as Sandy in the gussied up outfit. And I'm sitting there, you know, my cut off shorts and my ponytail and no makeup. And he looks at the picture of me as Sandy at the end of the show and me sitting here. And he goes, "Why don't you dress like that this all the time?" And I've never forgotten that question, right? Because on the one hand, I kind of giggled or laughed. But what he was saying is, right, that's a very male sexist thing to say, that he was valuing me based upon how I looked. And so I mentioned that that was something that I struggled with and internalized. So as a mom, oh man, I was like, feminism all the way. Girls, I don't want you to be cheerleaders or this or that. Well, of course, one of my daughters ended up being a pom-pom girl. It was great. We loved it. You know, so you can't, but I was always trying to introduce, you know, Cinderella Liberator and all this kind of stuff. But, you know, culture is culture. And my oldest daughter, who, I mean, her skin is as smooth as a baby's butt, so to speak. And the other day she goes, you know, I'm thinking about getting you know, a little Botox here. See this wrinkle there? I'm like, what are you talking about? So that's the world that we live in. There's such accessibility. There's such social media stuff. They're inundated with it. So I don't know, because I think people of my generation, I have friends, we tried and we did create some very feminist women. I will say that we did, but it doesn't mean that they still don't care about what they look like.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my younger daughter, much more of a hippie, much more, I would say she's the idea of the Dove commercial. She loves herself the way she is.
Mm-hmm.
I think my older daughter, you know, just, you know, probably is a little bit. So that's the conundrum. And I think it's still as relevant and power, and that force. And I don't know, but at the same time, I enjoy looking nice. I enjoy makeup. I enjoy nice clothes, but I don't have to do it. And so to each her own, I guess, is part of.
Yeah. And no, for sure. And I think that's been the theme of this podcast is personalize, you know, your experience based on what you want and what you want to achieve. So I really do agree with that, is to be comfortable in your own skin at the level that you want to be comfortable in. And sometimes that comes with some experiences, some maybe years of experience that we need to go through in order to be comfortable. I mean, I look at my parents sometimes or my dad, he'll just say stuff and I'm just like, wow, I can't wait to be at that age where I really don't care what comes out of my mouth. Sometimes it's a bit too much, but it's liberating. Like what we were talking about before too, it's empowering. And it's just like, you know what? I've been through it all. He's 80, 81. He's going to be 81 this year. And he's just sometimes says what he wants. And I feel like that, again, comes with being comfortable with who you are and not really caring what other people think, and you're just going to say it. So yes, I feel a lot of it has to do with just reaching that comfort level on your own terms, in your own sort of divine timing.
Yeah. And you know, there's a lot of women today. I don't have large breasts, but sorry to bring this up, but women who do, there is a real movement right now for breast reduction surgery. And when I heard a lot of these women interviewed talking about the sexist comments that they had been subjected to most of their life, right? Because there's this gross assumption on the behalf of men that they can whistle or call women out because of the size of their breasts. You know, I hate that. But they have found empowerment in getting breast reduction. So, you know, that's a powerful thing. And what a great world that we live in, that people can do that, because, and also the discomfort of, you know, people who want to run or whatever. I'm only bringing that up because how cool it is that we live in a world where there's all these different options too, for people to do what they need to do to help themselves. And, but it's funny because, you know, a lot of it is related to the comments that they were subjected to,
Interesting.
you know, the sexualization of women and that kind of thing. So it is still, for sure. And I think we'll be maybe fighting that battle for a while, but opening our eyes to it, talking about it, I think that's a huge.
Yes. And normalizing it for sure. So Jenny, what is one rule you've joyfully broken on your way to where you are today?
Mm.
Fun question.
It is. That's hard though, too. One rule I have joyfully broken. All right, can you give me an example of like one rule that you have?
Yes, I'm the only one in well, we're very close, our family. I think very similar to yours. And I'm the one that left for Dubai for 10 years. I was 14 hours away when everyone's about a 14-minute drive from my parents' place. So that was probably a rule that I broke within like my family and my house. But it did bring us closer together because when I would come home and visit for the summer, like I'm sure I'm closer to my siblings and my nieces because of that. So yeah, I'm happy that I broke that rule.
Okay, so you're gonna laugh at me, but right, don't think I don't think I can't think of a rule that I broke. I mean, I guess that's a good thing. It makes me sound like maybe I don't know, a little whatever, but I think it kind of goes back to that I was given a lot of permission to be myself.
Yeah.
I I don't think I felt you know what? I'll wake up tonight and I'll think of it, but honestly, Rita, I can't think of one.
That's okay. We can put it in the show notes. That's fine. We'll put it
Okay.
in the show
Okay.
notes. Yes, if you remember. If not, that's okay too. And that's why I love asking these questions as well. So that's okay too. So
I hope
if
I can
you
answer the next one.
yeah, no, you will. You'll be able to. Yes. If you could have lunch with any woman, past or present, now one woman, not more than one, who would it be and why?
Okay. It would be Michelle Obama. She, I don't know, I just think she's an astonishing person. And I remember reading her book and I realized I'm in Elmhurst. I'm outside Chicago. We're the same age. She grew up on the south side of Chicago. You know, we kind of grew up within, I don't know, 30 miles of each other. Boy,
Mm.
our lives took different paths. But she brings she brings a light to the world that we really need. And she's a grower and a learner and she celebrates what's important in life and she has great moral ambition and you know she espouses things that are truly important and it hasn't been easy, right? Imagine, right? She did that life that she chose, and yet she's done a remarkable job with it. And you can see her growth continuing to stand up for saying really tough things. And is she an eloquent speaker or what? She's a fantastic storyteller. And I want her clothes. I mean, she dresses utterly, she's the most fabulous dresser. Her style is phenomenal. And she's a real person. So that's who I want to have lunch with.
Beautiful. And you never know. You never know. So, nice little segue into the next question. And I'm sure you're going to find this very easy. What is a book, a quote, or a mantra that has profoundly impacted your life?
Well, I mentioned earlier that my dad's mantra growing up was never be afraid to put your hands in shit. Okay, so we can all recite that. But there was a book called The Power of Moments. Dan Heath and his brother Chip, I think they wrote it together. There's a story in there about a woman who, like me, had a father. They would gather around the kitchen table, and on Friday nights, the father would ask her and her brother every Friday night, what did you fail at this week? And if they didn't have an answer, he would be disappointed. And what he was doing was normalizing failure for them. That failure is a necessary part of growth. Well, that woman went on to, her name's Sarah Blakely, and she founded Spanx. And she was the youngest female billionaire in history at the time. And that is a powerful question that I still use to this day to ask myself when I start to second guess or or start to feel afraid of taking on a new thing, I ask myself, what did I fail at today? And I want to have an answer. And so that is probably the most, it just continues to uplift me and inspire me.
Yeah, I love that. It reminds me of when my dad, he talks a lot. He does this a lot. He says it to us that by trying, by failing, you're trying, which means that you're doing something, you're taking action, something very similar along those lines. I like that. Yeah. And it took me a while to translate because I was translating it in Italian. I'm like, okay, which one is the best? This is awesome. Okay, so what does success mean to you at this stage of your life and career, Jenny?
Success. Well, I think it means doing something that, if you're lucky enough, I talk a lot about privilege because I think it's important to acknowledge that if you're lucky enough to be able to do something that you love, that's really cool. I think success is also getting to a point in your life where you can turn outward and help other people. And it is that it's not about me, it's about finding causes that need attention. And so it is not only about having something that I enjoy, but am I going to leave the world a little better? I hope so. But it's really, and what I'm discovering now is that you can't just pay lip service to things that you care about. You have to be willing to move the needle. And so that is I'm 61, and that is a new challenge to myself. How am I using my privilege? I'm not ashamed of it, right? I don't have to feel bad about it, but I want to make sure that I'm doing something that helps solve, alleviate pain, contribute to the world in some important way. And so that is what I'm challenging myself to do right now. And the third piece is to try to to try to be a kind person. And, I wish I could say I'm as kind as I would like to be every day. I'm not. So I think success starts with kindness. And the sooner you can start being kinder, I think the better off our world will be.
I love that. So beautiful. I love it. So here are some fun rapid fire questions. They're usually one word or just sort of a quick answer. Okay. And then we wrap it up, this beautiful conversation. So one word to describe you as a leader, Jenny.
Inspiring.
If your leadership style were a dance move, what would it be?
Ooh. Jazz.
Nice. Morning person or night owl?
Morning.
Coffee, tea, or something else?
Coffee, then wine.
Mountains or oceans?
Mountains.
Pizza or pasta?
Pizza.
If you were a kitchen appliance, which one would you be and why?
I'd definitely be a blender, like a mix master, because I love cookies and I love to bake. And I love dough. So I could just eat the dough then.
What's your oddly specific superpower? Like always finding the best parking spot or picking the fastest grocery line?
You said it. I always find the closest parking spot.
They have a parking fairy too?
Yes. And my nickname is Duck. My nickname is Darlie Duck, and my family still calls me Duck. So they call it the luck of the duck when I get the front space.
I love it. If you could master instantly one new skill, just like that, what would it be?
Dancing. I want to learn the shuffle dance. I want to be super proficient at it.
Ooh, I could see you doing that. Oh yeah, you got this. You got this. What's next on your bucket list? So immediate and future, let's say 10 years from now. And you can choose whether it's personal bucket list or a professional one.
I I'm an advocate for prison reform in the United States. And so my bucket list, I have befriended a man in prison. And one of my goals is to help change the over incarceration of people, particularly in America. And I would like to find a way to help this man who has completely transformed his life to find a way to live out his aging years outside of prison. He's been in there for 36 years, and there's a lot of people like him. And so I hope in 10 years that we have begun to really think about why we put people in prison, what conditions we force them to live in, and can we let a lot of people out of prison who have proven themselves to have turned over a new leaf, often through education, have gotten education and all kinds of things. So that's on my bucket list.
So beautiful. What a beautiful strategy. Mission. Gorgeous. Amazing. I like that. I'm actually quite interested. We'll talk offline about that too. So in closing, Jenny, if you could gift every woman listening to this podcast or watching it one thing, tangible or not, think of Oprah, you in a car, you in a car, you in a car. What would it be?
I would give people with the belief that to give themselves permission to make mistakes, to let others have their own opinions, and to not seek the approval of others, and to give permission to themselves to express themselves, who they are in all of their strengths and weaknesses.
So beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for just being here today, taking time out of your schedule to share your beautiful story, to share your light, so many beautiful nuggets, inspiring words. So I am so grateful that you said yes. And just thank you for reminding us that our voice is one of our greatest tools. And when we find the courage to use it, we can just inspire, connect to others, connect to ourselves, and you really lead from your heart. So thank you for being here today.
And thank you, Rita, for your generous questions and your great listening and responses. And you have a real gift for that. And gosh, who doesn't like to get to talk about themselves? Really, golly. I'll celebrate with a glass of wine tonight. But yeah. So, Becca, thank you for inviting me on and for letting me share.
Have a beautiful rest of the day. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on UpliftHER Leadership Series, a special segment of the Self-Care Goddess podcast. If this conversation lit something up in you, please share it with a fellow changemaker, and let's keep building a new model of leadership together. Follow me on ritasavoya.com and stay connected for more conversations that blend well-being, wisdom, and bold feminine leadership. Until next time, breathe mindfully, live intentionally, thrive gracefully, and remember, self-care is your superpower. Ciao for now.